the product that Colin Cowherd invented the other day, San Francisco Seal. There is no leak. Now, I've seen some people push back, not on Colin's take that the Niners don't leak, but just over the months where we've talked about it. We've talked about it for a long time, that one thing that changed pretty quickly the second they took over. Really, before they took over, this was a story, right? This was one of the things that the organization really had to address. It's now a strength. Remember, one of the things with Kyle Shanahan was like, was it Shanahan or Lynch? It was basically, I'm walking if anything leaks from this interview process.
It was Lynch.
It was Lynch. Now, and I've seen over the last few months, as we've talked about this, people like, no, but we did know they liked Solomon, and we did know they liked. I think one thing is clear: when they have to protect it, they can. Once they've kind of made up their decision and they're in control, like Eisen did say Trey Lance the day before, but by that time maybe they were done hiding it. But this is
they told Jed on Wednesday,
right?
On Tuesday,
exactly.
One thing when we had a radio show in the peak of, for a lot of people, like, you guys just blow the Niners. Unless I don't even know if the archives exist, but
they don't.
There was not a more negative two people consistently on the Niners, because they were a full blown embarrassment. And I think one thing I used to openly say, and it was kind of openly written about, Kawakami was on this, like the leak was, and I don't know if. I don't live in every market, but I follow the NFL pretty closely, and this maybe things have just dramatically changed in 5 years, and this thing would become more like viral. Jed was viewed as the leak. The owner was viewed in our medium, in print medium, the way fans talked about it, like Jed was the guy who constantly talked and leaked everything to his reporters. I mean, that was one of Tim's main thing when he was, I would say, the most prominent guy that covered, wouldn't you say, the Niners divorce with Harbaugh and just that kind of year of Tim just getting, what would happen in Philly or New York. We don't really have that out here. And Tim and Jed, but it was like Jed was the leak. And I think one thing's clear, like, is Trent Baalke like a big leaker? Are really most GMs like Rick Spielman or just John Schneider, are they like, we got to get this out? Maybe occasionally when you got to do something strategically. There's nothing wrong with that. It's part of the game. I think pretty consistently, whether it was good or bad, early on in the decade, it might have been Harbaugh, but it led in with Chip and Tom Sula, that I think it was very, very difficult for Jed not to talk. And it might be just as simple as he loved these two guys now, and he knows it's important to them. He doesn't say anything. Because my thing with John, clearly, is friends with Cowherd, is friends with Glazer. Like, they talk. I'm pretty positive. Not saying Kyle doesn't have media friends. I'm sure he does. Not like Chris Sims, just people that text with him or whatever. I truly believe he doesn't give a flying fuck what is written or said.
No, I agree. I believe it too. And if there was ever a example, Chris Sims having no idea who he's taking is a pretty good example, right?
Now they could have been in cahoots.
They absolutely could have. Yeah. And I suggested as much, but yeah, they could have been in cahoots. But again, the information didn't get out. So
in fairness to Chris, he's been adamant, why would I? These are my opinions. I like the guy.
I don't think Chris knew. I believe that Chris did not know. And I think it's a great example of what you just said about Kyle. I also think you think about, you're like, what did you say? John Schneider doesn't leak. What was the other name you said?
I just use Rick Spielman in Minnesota.
I mean, what you're talking about are,
I try to pick football guys,
Yeah, but what you really say, think about the list of guys you don't think leak. And then let's go through what is common with those guys. I bet by and large they're pretty stable. They've had their job, they've been successful. They're not on the hot seat every year. You leak when you have a reason to leak, and usually you're trying to defend yourself, or stable organizations typically don't leak because they don't have to. They can just go about their business, right? They don't have to play the game. There's a lot of games that we all play in this game of life, and some of them you would play no matter what, and some of them you play because you got to play them. And the league game is not a game you play because it's a waste of your energy unless you got to play it. And the only time you really got to play it is when you have to swing public opinion about yourself, when there's some power struggle going on, when you got to make yourself look good because somebody else is attacking you, right? Think about what's been happening with the ownership at the Washington football team. It's just this constant, there's this battle going on. Stable organizations.
They try to do a hostile takeover.
Yeah. Stable organizations don't do it because you wouldn't waste your time with it unless there was a benefit to you. And if you're stable, there's no benefit. People just respect you for what you do. So they're stable now, and it's you could go chicken or the egg. Like the fact that those guys were adamant about not leaking was a hint that that stability was really important to them.
The Niners thing was out of control the Harbaugh time, right? Remember, it was week 1, they were playing the Cowboys, Jim's 4th year. He's going to get fired, right? Remember, the locker room hates him. It was just one, every week it was a story. That offseason, Florio, the trade, it was crazy. Like it was.
They were going to trade Harbaugh.
The Niners jumped the shark on the leaks. Like they couldn't keep their mouth shut. And I think looking back, a very good educated guess. We all assumed at the time it was Jed.
I would also say, looking back, it's a little bit understandable.
Well, yeah, he had to get things out.
Public opinion was all on Harbaugh's side.
Yeah, you had to get it out that he's a crazy SOB. And I think what he learned, no one gives a shit. When you win, you could tell me, Jed, he told you to pull your pants down, run around the practice field. Just do unlimited laps. Like the fans would have laughed. Maybe Jed learned from it. I don't know. Maybe it's easy because he respects John and Kyle. That was a 100% lose. Jed lost. Jed lost that heavily, right? I mean, he got if that was a game, Harbaugh versus Jed. Now it's aged. It hasn't gotten great for Harbaugh, but just Harbaugh with the Niners and the Harbaugh firing to go to Tom Sula and Chip is like 100-0 to Harbaugh. Just everything. Jed lost. Like he got destroyed. Because he kept trying to double down on the PR game. My whole take on the PR game, I think it's very overrated. Like, just let your stuff speak for itself.
Sure,
and you get too caught up on that.
I also do understand. Yeah, I understand at that level.
You had to do something with a divorce, but it's just like he wouldn't let it go.
I also think the mistake, now that we have hindsight, the mistake was not moving on from Harbaugh. The mistake was who got hired after Harbaugh.
Yeah.
As we're discussing this, let's include a YouTube comment because Troy says on YouTube. Troy says 1 year out of how many, and that makes you stable. Thinky emoji. There's a difference between winning and just being stable people, being a stable organization, right? Being people that don't have any interest in playing that game. And I think part of it is the Niners. I think John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are pretty self-confident who they are, what they're doing, why they're doing it. Time will tell if they need to win, right? But you can be a stable person and have a stable organization, even if your win-loss record is not stable.
I got another one for you. There is a dramatic difference between having one good season, aka like making the playoffs, and going to the Super Bowl. There just is. Like you can go around the league. Like there have been several teams in the NFL that like when Minnesota go to Super Bowl, Lions go to Super Bowl, Texans go to Super Bowl. Like most teams don't go to the Super Bowl. They help. I bet if you look the last 20 years, how many teams have not made a championship game, right? Like that's. I know Raider fans always get offended, like, they had 1 year. Like, yeah, their 1 year went to the fucking – if the Raiders went to the Super Bowl, you guys would fucking throw a party, and deservingly so, even if you lost it. Like, it's a big deal. It's simply a big deal. The Cowboys, it speaks to how big their brand is, have not been to a championship game since 95, 96 season, whatever, that last – their last Super Bowl in their three-peat. They haven't been to a championship game. That means they haven't made it past the second round. And they've had a lot of, like, productive playoff. I bet they've made the playoffs, just if I had to guess off the top of my head, in the last 20 years, 7-8 times, right? Just be a wild card team stuff. That they haven't made it past the second round. Like that's doing that. Like obviously the game is like why the Chiefs get all the credit now. It's like 3 straight years of championship games, back-to-back Super Bowls. They won one. Like the highest level is just rattling off like championship games, right? And then win like every 5 years, win a Super Bowl. If you can do like a Brady and Belichick, win like 2 of 4, whatever. But
how about like last year, it falls apart on you and you still win your division?
Who's that?
The Seahawks.
Yeah, they're a great example. Like the Niners have to do that. Like they're not, the Rams have had much more success in 4 years than the Niners, right? Because they've both been to a Super Bowl, and the Rams haven't had a losing season the other 3 years.
Yeah.
Right? And they've made the playoffs twice. They've won a playoff game. Yeah, that's not – I completely agree. But to act like it's just some random one-off, like going to a Super Bowl, like the year the Falcons lost to the Super Bowl was a really big deal for the franchise, right? Yeah. I know it sucked the way to lose 28-3. Now, part of why it turned out they crumbled, the reason they crumbled, because the reason they were great was their offensive the offense, and then the coach leaves, and then they weren't quite the same. So can the Niners, can their defense maintain good? There are questions. No one's putting this thing in stone, but clearly Kyle and John are good.
Yeah,
now, John has a huge role. We'll find out personnel stuff. They've had a lot of misses, like a lot of teams. I think we know Kyle's really good.
Yeah, and here's a comment on YouTube from Jacob. They still have a lot to prove. No question. But here's what they don't have to prove is that they know how to just run an organization. They know how to run a solid organization, hierarchy, talented people working together, not infighting. If there is, it doesn't get out. Keep it in-house, right? Unified messaging, those types of things. They still got to win a bunch of football games, no question. But that, to me, the point of this conversation, here's one thing that the organization struggled with, that good organizations do consistently, that we can say pretty definitively they do consistently.